What's up, guys? Rick from DFS On Demand here with the ultimate DFS golf research process video. This is probably long overdue, but I've got a bunch of new tools now, so I wanted to walk you through the steps that I go through on a weekly basis to do some PGA research, which is really the most critical part of fantasy and DFS golf because there's so many golfers on the tour. They change every single week. The course changes every single week. So the research process is critically important. This for me is hopefully just video one in a long series. I hope to deep dive into each one of these topics even a little bit further. And that's where I'm asking for your help. So if you would like to be entered to win a weekly subscription to my site, DFS On Demand, which is all the tools that you're going to see in this video, do me a favor, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, like the video, and comment below with a topic you would like me to cover in a future video, something that you'd like me to deep dive on more. That's one way to get entered. Another way is on the audio podcast. Leave a 5-star review, say something nice or something that you're looking forward to hearing, and leave me your Twitter handle, and we'll get you entered that way as well. I hope this video lasts for a while, so I'll pick a couple every few weeks or so, announce them on other videos within my channel, and I'll get in touch with you if you have one. That's about it. I hope you enjoy this DFS PGA research video, and here's to many more. The first place that I like to start each week is right here on the cheat sheet because it allows me to get a very quick overview of all of the players in the field and some of their more basic metrics that I want to be interested in and ones that I might be able to go and dive a little bit deeper into. So every player in the field sorted by their salary, including ownership projections, DraftKings points projections on both a floor and a ceiling basis. It has their standard yearly strokes gain stats. It has their recent tournament history, their recent history worldwide, and then their tournament history for whatever this week's tournament is. You're looking at the Greenbrier event for this week. So what this allows me to do and what I'm looking for is a few things. I'm looking for golfers that ideally are playing well coming into this event. So the left-hand side of this is always going to be the most recent event worldwide. So that could be on the Euro Tour or it could be on the PGA Tour. And it's going to work its way back from more recent to less recent. So this goes from the Tour Championship back to the Andalusia Masters, which is a European Tour event. The tournaments that you're seeing are included down here, so you can see Tour Championship, BMW, Northern Trust, etc. So I'm looking for, obviously, the green number. The greener the number, the better. That's based on their finishing position. So I can just right off the bat see Jason Kokrak, 4 straight top 20s coming into this event. Okay, that's good to know. I can see that Mark Leishman has had a couple of high finishes, a 19th at the BMW and a 3rd at the WGC, but he has surrounded that with a missed cut at the Open Championship, a missed cut at the Northern Trust, and then 24th, that's out of 30 at the Tour Championship. So that's a very inconsistent set of results. So what I'm really doing is trying to figure out who's playing well coming into this event, and I can scroll through that based on salary, right? So the further I go down here, the lower salary options we get. And these might not be guys that played in the playoff events last year. So here's Tom Lewis at 7,900. He's played twice internationally, a 43rd at the Scottish and an 11th at the British Open. So that's good to know. Then I can keep going here. Here's a couple of green ones here. Adam Schenk, he's got 3 top 25. So I'm able to just scroll through here and see which players are playing well. Then what I'll do is I'll try to match that up with guys who have played well at the event that I'm looking at. So if this is Greenbrier tournament history. Again, same thing. The greener, the better. Here's Kevin Na being your defending champion the last time this was played in 2018. Russ Henley stands out on this because he has a 10th, a 5th, and a 5th in his last 3 starts at this tournament. Then you're just trying to match this up. So you can look at it and say, okay, well, Jason Kokrak has been playing well coming in, and he has a 3rd place finish the last time he teed it up here. He's interesting. Robert Streb, elite course history, 11th, 2nd, and 2nd coming in, but absolutely terrible leading up to this event. He's missed at least 4 of his last 5 cuts. Obviously, it could go back even further than that, which I can show you more on in a second. So when you're starting to find, trying to determine which guys you want to play, the further down the list you go, the less appealing options you're going to get, but you might be able to find golfers who stick out in one way or another. So here is Johnson Wagner. 13th place finish. That was right before the playoffs in the last tournament that he played. And he has at least some good vibes here where he finished 2nd in 2013. Brendan Todd, additionally, hasn't played in a couple years, but the last 2 times he played it, a 6th and a 4th. So these are the things that I'm just trying to get a feel for as I start my research process for the week. I'm kind of making mental check marks into the guys that are crossing off some of these boxes for me. The other thing that I'm trying to get a feel for early in the week is what the projected ownership for these golfers is going to be. Obviously, this depends a little bit on the type of contest that you're playing, but in general, the lower owned guys are the contrarian plays and usually come with a little more risk, a little bit more reward if you're trying to win a GPP or something like that. So these will update usually like Tuesday-ish because we wait and see where the rest of the industry is kind of talking up these guys, and then the ownership projections come out. So I can sort by any of these and just say, okay, very likely that Joaquin Niemann, Victor Hovland, and Ben An are, the 3 highest owned golfers this week. So I might want to find a fade of those golfers. Maybe I want to pivot to someone else instead of playing them, or maybe I want to, okay, I know I'm going to take these guys, but then I'm going to have to take a couple of really low owned guys that I might like, even Mark Leishman, 6.4%. He would be the guy over $10,000. That would be a very contrarian play. And as you go through the different salary tiers, you can compare these golfers, right? So just above $10,000, there's a range of 6.5% to 26.5% of where these golfers are likely to check in on projected ownership. So that is valuable information when you're constructing your lineup. So just getting a feel for that early on, the cheat sheet, really good place. And then what I realize I need to do is I need to think about the course that we're playing this week, and I need to find out what stats are important. Obviously, every course is built differently. Some are longer than others. Some have smaller greens. Some have bigger greens. Some are faster. Some are slower. There's a million different factors for every single course, and almost too many to look at. So what we need to do is try to figure out what stats are going to be critical for each week. And there's a few ways to do this. Most people, they can guess, quite frankly. I mean, you can just go out there and say it's a long course, driving distance might be important, but I like to leave it to the math and the model. So I have this key stats tool that I look at about 1 million times every single week. And what I do is since I have all of the results and all of the stats for every tournament on the PGA Tour dating back who the heck knows how long, I compare the two. So I take the stats for every player for that season and compare it to the results on the course for each season. And what that allows me to do is create a correlation to say which stats, the players that did well on this course also did well in these stat categories. And it could be a course fit, not a course history type of situation where you're building the types of players that you want to roster each and every week. So there's a lot going on here. So there's 145 official stats on the PGA Tour that I use to compare against finishing position. And some of them are pretty wonky, right? Like approaches from 200 yards being the most important stat might be a little noisy, quite frankly, because, there's probably a small sample size. It could just be a coincidence that, the guys who play well in this stat category happen to finish well at the Greenbrier. So there's that part to look at it. but I show you the ability so that you can see it anyway. And then there's highest correlated stats, which are always going to make sense, right? So the highest correlated stats are like, hey, scoring average. It's no surprise that the players who are best in scoring average get the best results. That's why they're the best players. That's why they're the best in scoring average, right? Strokes gained total, same thing. That's a composite of your entire game. Now, front nine scoring is actually pretty interesting because, especially for the Greenbrier, the back nine at the Greenbrier is the easier side. There's the two par fives live on the back. So if you can get out to an early start and play well on the front and beat the rest of the field on the front, now you get to take advantage of the back. You probably make up more strokes that way. So I don't know how noisy or how sticky this stat is, but I do think it's interesting. And then finally, what I do is I rank the most common stats. And this is what I think is really critical here. And this is probably where I look the most as far as research goes. I take the stats that are probably the best for a correlation model because we have a huge sample size. The way that the stat is calculated is extremely well done. So the strokes gained stats are the best stats that we have available. There is a baseline for every single golfer. Every shot gets tracked with it as long as, except for a handful of tournaments a year. So there's just a lot of data and it's really, really good data. So I included all of those. I then include things like driving accuracy because if the rough is super thick in one place, it might be more penal. Driving distance might be important for longer courses, and then even like the birdie or better stats. So there's a handful of stats here that I like to include so that, these are the ones I kind of narrow it down to. And the way that the rank works is I've ranked these against the 49 common PGA courses within the last couple of years. So they're not going to play 49 different courses every single year, but dating back a couple of years, and some tournaments have course rotation. So we get up to 49 different courses. So the way to read this, because strokes gained tee to green is going to be critical every single week. Okay, the best players who play well tee to green usually play well in the golf tournament. But what the rank does is it ranks the Greenbrier and the Old White TPC, which is the name of the course, against the 49 or the 48 other courses. So the way to read this is strokes gained tee to green is more important at the Old White TPC than all but one other course. So that is why it ranks number 2. It's only more important at one other course, and it is more important here than 47 other courses. So when you start looking at it like that, you're like, wow, okay. So strokes gained off the tee, pretty important. 13 out of 49, that's a top, 25% stat? Strokes gained approach, that's always going to be important, but again, it's in the top third here of all courses on the PGA Tour. Driving accuracy, kind of middle of the pack. It's a little bit important. Driving distance, pretty much neutral. It's about the average on tour. This course plays at 2,000 feet of elevation, so even the shorter hitters get a little bit extra this week. And then you can see from there kind of what the rest of the correlations are. So now, after that long-winded explanation, I can sit here and say, okay, I'm going to narrow my focus to players who are really good in strokes gained tee to green, and then separate of that, really good off the tee, and then separate of that, kind of really good in strokes gained approach. So I now, down here, will sort by each one of these stats. So I'll say, okay, sort by strokes gained off the tee. Let me see the best players in the field off the tee. And it's Viktor Hovland. He's 10,900. He gains 1.06 strokes per round off the tee. Then you see Bubba is here. Jason Kokrak, Brendan Steele. So I can say, oh, wow, like I'm just making mental notes. Brendan Steele, $6,700. That would be a pretty good value. Kevin Streelman, 86. Sepp Straka, 76. Pretty good values, pretty good values. Then I can do this for the other stats. Strokes gained approach. Wow, Viktor Hovland again leads the way. So he's first in basically the two most important categories that we have available. Jason Kokrak is here again, Taylor Gooch, Russell Knox, Keegan Bradley. Keegan Bradley showed up to me a couple of times here because he's really good tee to green. He can't putt to save his life, but we know putting is least important here. There's only 4 other courses on the PGA Tour where putting is less important than here at the Greenbrier. So Keegan Bradley shows up because he's so good off the tee and he's so good on approaches. And then I can sort again by strokes gained tee to green. So now I'm looking at this and saying, wow, that $9,000 range, where almost every golfer in that $9,000 range is pretty playable because of the stats that we're looking at here. So this is where I kind of break ties, or where I will just start to really hone in on my core. But this also leads me to a lot of other questions too. So when I go back to strokes gained off the tee, I saw, okay, Bubba Watson, that's interesting. You know, he's played here a lot. He has a residence here. He's got like 4 top 15 finishes, which I saw on the cheat sheet, but never really anything better than that. So I know he's really good off the tee, which is going to be important this week, but I want to do a deeper dive into Bubba. So I'm going to switch over to the strokes gained database, which is brand new this year, and I can't believe I'm even letting everyone access my database, but here's what it is. It's every round on tour that is measured with ShotLink data. So that's not the Masters. They don't use ShotLink data at the Masters, and there's a couple of one-off events where they don't use it. But basically every PGA sanctioned event is going to have it. And it dates back to 2016. So we have a lot of rounds on these guys. So just looking at this, I have 166 rounds on Rory alone, which is really important information. So I want to look at Bubba. So I'm just going to drop down and I want to say, okay, let's see what the heck is going on with Bubba Watson here. So I switch over to Bubba, and I'm already sorted by recent rounds, right? And I can look at this and I can say, okay, Bubba down here averages about 3/4 of a stroke gained off the tee in his career. I mean, I can change this to even be more recent. I could just say since, in all of 2019. And that's 50 rounds, and it's still basically the same thing, about 3/4 of a strokes gained per round. And I can say, okay, that is clearly his weapon. However, he lost strokes off the tee in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of his last 9 rounds at the end of last season. So a guy whose best weapon is his off the tee game doesn't seem to have much control of it at the moment, or at least it's not as good as it normally is, which to me is a pretty big red flag, because that's where you need Bubba to really be the man. Because if you look at this, he's dead even on a strokes gained approach in his last 50 rounds. He is losing strokes around the green, and he is losing strokes putting. So if he goes out and loses off the tee, like he's been doing recently, he's in big trouble. He's at risk to pack this thing up on Friday and head to his residence there at the resort and not have to worry about Saturday or Sunday. So this is the type of thing that I like to look at when I'm diving deeper into these golfers. I want to see a little bit more recently what they've actually done. And one other guy I want to take a look at is Keegan Bradley while I'm here. So let me go see if I can find Keegan here. And I just want to do a little deeper dive. And this is interesting. So we know he's really good off the tee. And you can see that from the results here, right? Even in his last, oh my goodness, the guy almost never loses off the tee. That's 4 rounds, 8 rounds, 12 rounds, basically 16-ish, 17. He's gained, 14 out of 17 rounds off the tee. Really, really good, really consistent. Now, what I notice about Keegan is this. Keegan averages, so if you just look at the averages, a half a stroke gained on approaches per round. That number's really, really good. If we go back to the key stats, you see Keegan would rank, where is my guy Keegan? Oh, right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th in this field in strokes gained approach. So on paper, that's awesome. Now here's the caveat to this. Look at how inconsistent Keegan is on approaches. He will regularly lose 2.5 strokes, lose 3, gain 2.5, gain 2, lose 2, gain 1.5. Like, it is all over the place. That half a stroke that he gains on average is not consistent. It's not like he just does that every round or stays within a little bit of it. It's all over the place. So when I'm going through my process, I look at this and I say, okay, Keegan is a really, really good fit, but he's also very risky. I'm not going to play Keegan in a cash game because if he goes out and just has 2 bad rounds, which he's very capable of doing, he might kill me and he might kill my entire cash lineup. So Keegan is someone that I would only use in GPPs because of this volatility. He is also someone who is like perfectly suited for showdown because you can catch him on a really hot round. So for example, this round right here where he gained a stroke and a half on approaches and a stroke and a half off the tee and 2.5 on approaches. Now, he putted, he lost them everywhere else, but like if he gets everything going, but everything in the positive direction, he's going to have a really big outlier round. This one right here gained nearly 4 strokes on approaches alone, which was basically what he gained for his entire round at the FedEx St. Jude. So he is someone that is like, you could absolutely catch on a really hot day. He could be the best golfer in the field, or you can catch him on a bad day. He could be the worst golfer in the field. So I need to know that. And the only way to know that is to really look at the game logs, or I should say the round logs of all of these strokes gained information. And as you're going through this week after week, you're learning about these players. I never once considered that Keegan was going to be a consistent type player. So that was never a question for me, but that's because I see his numbers all the time, and you just continue to learn this information about these golfers. Now, there was one golfer that I saw on the cheat sheet that I again want to take a deeper look at, but I want to do it on the player profiles or the golfer profile tool. And again, this is brand new, and I'm really proud of this, where you can come in here and see the results for every single player recently, their DraftKings scoring, their average salary, their world rank, and then their strokes gained stats by each one. So I'm really happy with this. And I want to look at Kevin Na, because Kevin Na is technically the defending champion here at the Greenbrier. But he withdrew from the BMW Championship in the playoffs with an injury. So I want to look at him and I want to say, okay, let's look at Kevin. Average salary $7,400. He's going to be more expensive than that this week because it's a weaker field. He's the defending champion. But average is about 50 DraftKings points. And I can look at this and say, okay, well, Kevin is not very good off the tee, but he's really good in every other category. So that's good to know. And here are his DraftKings results. And you can see, again, a very volatile golfer. 56, 114, 21, kind of all over the place. But here's what I really want to see. I want to see his logs. And, see, this is kind of interesting because I almost forgot Kevin Na had won an event just a few months ago. So he won the Charles Schwab Challenge in May, shot 13 under par, gained, oh my gosh, look at all these strokes he gained. Gained a ton putting, which is probably not going to happen again, but played really well on approaches, played really well off the tee. Then you start to see the game really deteriorate. And you can look at this and say, well, I wonder if that was because of that wrist injury that he had, or if it's just something bigger. So I like to come in here and just get a quick glance at these logs. And now the strokes gain information, instead of being done on a tournament basis, is being done, instead of being done on a round-by-round basis, is being done on a tournament basis, which is also really good to see. Just kind of summarizes everything for you. So Kevin Na, we haven't seen in about a month, and wasn't playing well down the stretch, but there's not many guys in this field that have won a golf tournament within the last 6 months or so. So Kevin Na is pretty interesting. So now that I've got all this information, I've got to start making decisions. And I'll do a follow-up video kind of on actual lineup decisions, but what I will say is this. As I've been going through this process, I've just been kind of making mental notes or writing them down or whatever works best for you for the guys that I think are most interesting. Victor Hovland, his stats were excellent. Keegan Bradley jumped off the page on stats. Really, all of these 9K guys were really, really appealing for one reason or another. It could be course history, it could be recent form, or it just could be stats. And the way that I start to build my lineups is not from the top of the salary list, and it is not from the bottom of the salary pool. It is the guys that I cannot live without. So if I determine that that is Victor Hovland this week, I have to have him in my lineup. He's my first man in. Or if I decide it's Byung-Young An, that might be the guy who is my first man into every lineup, but it is not dictated based on salary. It's just the guy that I think, based on everything that I've looked at, stats, history, salary, projected ownership, whatever I'm playing, I really think that he needs to be in my lineup, then he's my first man in. And then I start to build around that. Who's the second most important to me? Who's the third most important to me? And I start going that way until I have a finished lineup. I'll follow up with more of these videos, but I really hope you enjoyed that process.